The first time I felt the numbness in my hands, I thought it was the disease getting worse. The second time, I knew it was her. You don't question your wife when she says, "Trust me." Not when she's been the one beside you through late night, hospital visits, blood tests, and the bitter taste of pills that barely worked. But that night, her hands lingered too long as she passed me the new bottle. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Her smile was soft, sweet, and wrong. I took the pill, anyway, because love makes you stupid. 2 hours later, I couldn't feel my fingers. My body felt heavier than usual, not tired, not weak, but like I was sinking slowly into something I couldn't see. I remember lying on the couch, the room spinning, and Haley watching me with that same soft smile. She said, "It's just the side effects kicking in. Go lie down." I slept like I was being drugged, not healed, and maybe that's exactly what I was. The next morning, I sat alone at the dining table while she packed my lunch, kissed me on the cheek, and told me she loved me. It was almost convincing. That's the thing about dying slowly. Everyone's so used to watching you break down, they don't notice when someone speeds it up. But I noticed, and I wasn't going to die without knowing why, so I switched the bottle, sent the contents to a private lab under a fake name. And I waited. Every meal she cooked, every refill she handed me, every concerned look. I watched it, all memorizing the rhythm of betrayal. 4 days later, the results came in. The pills weren't mine, not even close. That night, I stared at Haley across the dinner table as she poured wine and asked me how my day went. I smiled, lifted the glass, toasted to love. She drank first, and I thought to myself, "You tried to kill me with science. Now let's see how you handle a little chemistry of your own." My name is Jose Reyes, 34, former biomedical researcher. Diagnosed with chronic neurovascular deterioration 5 years ago, fancy name for a disease that makes your body slowly stop listening to your brain. Some mornings my fingers forget how to hold a toothbrush. Some nights I wake up screaming because my legs burn like they're on fire. It's not terminal, but it eats you alive just the same. Before the diagnosis, I was a rising star in the lab, published papers, keynote talks, 2 grants, a job offer from a private biotech firm in New York. That was the same week I proposed to Haley. We met at the university. She was working admin in the pharmacology department. We collided over spilled coffee in the library. She laughed at my flustered apology, told me I owed her a drink, then handed me a napkin with her number on it. 2 years later, we got married. Quiet ceremony, just family. I still remember how tightly she held my hand when we said our vows, like she couldn't believe it was real. When I first got sick, she was everything. Every appointment, every scan, every dark hallway that smelled like antiseptic and fear, she was there, holding my hand, rubbing my shoulder, telling me we'd figure it out together. She adjusted my diet, managed my meds, even left her job to help me at home when things got worse. I thought, if this is what love looks like under pressure, then I'm the luckiest man on earth. I was wrong. 3 months ago, I started getting worse, fast. My limbs went numb longer. The pain came in waves like never before. My speech slurred at times. But the strange part was that none of it matched what my regular meds should have been doing. I chalked it up to progression. Until I noticed the labels on my prescriptions didn't match the doses from before. One day I confronted Haley, asked if the pharmacy had changed suppliers. She smiled, said the doctor recommended a newer version. Better absorption, she claimed. Less fatigue. I believed her, because after everything we'd been through, how could I not? But then came the night I spilled the pills by accident, sleek capsules I didn't recognize. That same week, my old med bottle, empty and dusty, turned up in the trash, even though I'd never thrown it out. Something in my gut twisted, the kind of instinct you don't admit to yourself right away because it sounds insane. But I knew. I just didn't want to say it out loud. I told her I was going back to work part-time. She was thrilled, said it would lift my spirits. What she didn't know was that I'd booked an appointment with a private toxicologist. I submitted the capsules for testing under a pseudonym, Jordan R. Hayes, and paid in cash. I needed the results to come clean. I needed proof that what I was feeling wasn't just paranoia fed by pain and guilt. I needed someone else to confirm the fear I couldn't shake. While I waited, I tried to act normal. Haley was perfect. She made fresh juice in the mornings, tucked in my shirt collar before I left notes in my lunchbox that read, "Proud of you," and "Keep smiling." It made me nauseous. We'd been married 7 years. 7 years of partnership, of building something together. I remember how she used to lie awake counting my heartbeat when I was too sick to sleep. She once shaved my face while I was having tremors so I wouldn't feel ashamed going outside. She held me like her world depended on it. So how do you reconcile that version of someone with the one who might be feeding you poison? The answer is simple. You don't. You live in both versions. You sit across from them at dinner and smile. You kiss their forehead. You thank them for their care. And you wait for the results, for the truth, for the final betrayal. Then Neve called. She was Haley's younger sister. A little wild, never liked rules, always wore too much eyeliner and called my condition your stupid brain thing. We were never close, but she was blunt, and blunt people notice things others ignore. She asked me how I was feeling. I told her I was tired. She asked if I was still taking those pills. Her voice got quiet. "You need to get out of that house, Jose." I asked her why. She said Adam told her something over drinks. He was Haley's co-worker, worked in risk analysis. She laughed it off at the time, but now it didn't sound so funny. He said Haley made a joke about me being worth more dead. Neve thought it was just gallows humor. But the way she said it now, even she didn't believe that anymore. I hung up, went into the bathroom, locked the door, looked at myself in the mirror. My pupils were pinned. My mouth felt dry. I was losing weight again. My hands trembled just brushing my teeth. This wasn't just a decline. This was sabotage. The next morning, I faked forgetting. To take my pill, Haley reminded me sweetly. I smiled and said, "Thanks." But I pocketed the capsule. That night, I replaced it with a vitamin. I watched her as I swallowed it. She watched me like a nurse watches a patient, except her smile was sharper. Her eyes didn't leave my throat. And in that moment, I stopped pretending. This was no longer a marriage. It was a case study. And I was going to write the conclusion, myself. The lab report arrived in a plain envelope. No return address, just my name written in careful block letters. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee, fed the dog. Sat in the kitchen, letting the envelope stare back at me from the table like it already knew what it was about to say. When I finally opened it, the words didn't scream. They whispered, "Compound identified, BNC7 suppressive agent not prescribed. Not FDA approved. Neuroinhibitory effects confirmed. Known off-label use. Sedative and high-stress psychiatric treatment. Not a vitamin. Not even close." The pills were meant to shut me down slowly, neurologically, cognitively, physically. With long enough exposure, it would mimic rapid degeneration. Eventually, I'd lose basic functions, muscle control, memory, even the ability to speak. A chemical lobotomy. And she gave it to me with her hands wrapped around my coffee mug every morning. I stared at the results until the words started to double. Then I printed 2 copies. I hid the real one in the study behind the false drawer where I kept our wedding album. The second copy I edited. Changed the compound name, replaced the description with something harmless. Nutrient enhancement compound, mild fatigue expected. I left that version on the kitchen counter, casually folded near the fruit bowl. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she found it. I watched her read it over toast and orange juice. Her shoulders dropped an inch. She smiled and made a casual comment about how I looked brighter lately. She kissed my cheek. Said she was proud of me for following through with the tests. Called me brave. I called her beautiful. Then left the house and drove straight to Neve's apartment. She opened the door still in pajamas. "Tell me you found something." I handed her the real report. She scanned it fast. Her lips parted. "She really did this? Jesus, Jose." I nodded. "I don't think it was just her." She looked up sharply. "Adam," I said. "He's in it too." "You're sure?" "She doesn't know what BNC7 is. She wouldn't even know where to get it." Neve ran her fingers through her hair. "You think she's trying to kill you?" "No. Not fast enough to be murder, but slow enough that no one would question it. She makes the decisions. Handles my meds. Tells everyone I'm declining." My voice turned bitter. "Eventually, people would pity her. And when I finally stop functioning, she gets to be the grieving wife, with the insurance payout. And Adam." Neve clenched her jaw. "You want to go to the police?" "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because she's still too careful. She'll cry, deny it, say I misunderstood. All it takes is one technicality for her to walk." Neve folded her arms. "So what do you want to do?" I looked at her. "I want her to feel it. The doubt, the panic, the fear of everything falling apart." Neve stared at me for a long. "Maudie, you really loved her, didn't you?" I didn't answer, because love doesn't mean anything once the poison hits your bloodstream. When I came home, Haley was cooking dinner. She looked up and smiled, the smell of rosemary and garlic thick in the air. "Where were you?" she asked, clearing my head. "I made your favorite," she said, lifting the lid off the pan. "Lamb stew." I sat at the counter watching her stir. "You remember when we used to cook together?" I asked. She paused, spoon in midair. "Of course." "I was thinking about that today," I continued, "about how everything felt simple back then." She smiled softly, the spoon resting gently against the pot's edge. "We're still that couple, Jose. We're just going through a tough season, but we'll get through it." I stared at her, searching for the lie under the kindness. "You know," I said, "I think I'll start taking my medication at night from now on." "Oh?" she asked, eyebrows lifting slightly. "Just makes more sense with the fatigue," I said, lifting a spoonful of stew to my lips. She nodded. "Whatever makes you feel best." She believed she still had control. That night, I flushed the capsule, then lay in bed beside her, eyes open in the dark, wondering how many more lies she'd whisper into my chest before she realized I wasn't sleeping. The next morning, I found her whispering into her phone on the porch. Her voice dropped when she saw me. She ended the call fast. I asked her who it was. She said, "Work." I said, "At 7 a.m.? She smiled, kissed my cheek, and told me not to overthink things. But I wasn't overthinking anymore. I was watching, waiting. She thought I was still, her dying husband, too weak to stand on my own. She didn't know I'd already rewritten the end of her story, and soon, she was going to read it. Jose sat alone in the dark, the blue light from the hallway casting long shadows over the kitchen tiles. The house was silent, but his thoughts were screaming. His hands trembled, not from the disease this time, but from restraint. Every breath felt borrowed. Every glance Haley gave him now looked like a performance he couldn't unsee. The warmth in her eyes had become venom. The love in her voice had turned to strategy. And yet, he still remembered what it felt like to be held by her when he was breaking. That was the hardest part. Hating her would have been easier if he hadn't once trusted her with everything. The report sat in his drawer like a death certificate with his name on it. It was real. Confirmed. No more guessing. No more convincing himself that he was imagining things. His own wife had been feeding him something meant to ruin him. Slow enough to look like natural decline. Smart enough to dodge blame. Cold enough to pretend it was care. He caught himself wondering, why? Was it just money? Power? Was Adam the reason? Did she ever love him even for a moment? He stared into the mirror some nights, asking questions out loud just to hear how crazy they sounded. Was I that blind? Did I deserve this? Sometimes he waited for his reflection to answer. Sometimes he imagined it whispering, "You were just convenient." And that cut deeper than anything. The silence in the house had a weight. Everything felt curated, measured. Her smiles were timed, her touches brief, her kindness always followed by questions. "Did you take your pill? How are you feeling? Did you talk to the pharmacy?" It was all a script, and he had memorized every line. He became obsessed with details, tracing patterns, recording when she left the house, tracking calls. He even started writing down what she served him each day, measuring textures, checking ingredients. He never thought he'd live in paranoia inside his own home, but that's where he was now, playing detective in a marriage that used to be his anchor. There were moments he felt like confronting her, just throwing the report in her face and screaming every curse he'd swallowed for weeks. But he knew it wouldn't end the way it needed to. She'd lie, cry, maybe even play the victim. She was too good at that. He had seen her talk her way out of tougher things in front of doctors and lawyers. No, he couldn't give her that chance. Some nights he watched her sleep, studied the soft rhythm of her chest rising and falling. He remembered the nights she used to hum to him, rub his temples when the pain got unbearable. He wanted to believe some part of that version of her had been real, but the silence between them now was louder than any lullaby she'd ever sung. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was what it had done to him. He'd stopped trusting everyone. Every word Nevi said, every look from a nurse at the clinic, every voicemail on his phone, he dissected all of it. His entire body was always clenched, like waiting for another blow. He didn't even know how to relax anymore. Sometimes he questioned himself. What if I'm wrong? What if I've created this entire nightmare because I can't accept what's happening to my body? But those doubts didn't last long. Not after he caught Adam leaving their house when she was supposed to be at her mother's. Not after he found the locked drawer in her vanity with printed insurance documents. Not after he read Adam's text on her phone when she left it unlocked. One morning. Soon. Once he slips. We wait. Slip. That word haunted him. Every choice he made from that day was with one goal. Survive. Not just physically, but mentally. Emotionally. He refused to give them the ending they were writing for him. He wanted his own. There were moments when he sat with his hands over his ears just to drown out the noise in his mind. Moments when he whispered his own name aloud just to remind himself he was still here. Still Jose. Not some patient. Not some victim. Not some pawn. He'd never been a violent man. But there were days he dreamt of smashing the kitchen table she smiled across every morning. Of destroying every photo of them ever taken. Of shouting in her face and watching her mask crack. But he didn't. Because revenge wasn't rage, it was precision, and he was done crying, done shaking, done doubting. He was going to make her look him in the eye one last time, right when everything she built around him collapsed, and when it did, she wouldn't see a broken man. She'd see the one she tried to kill, still standing. Jose thought he was ahead. He thought the silence, the watching, the slow unraveling he was orchestrating would be enough. But the second twist didn't come from Haley. It came from Neve. It was a Tuesday afternoon when he walked into her apartment, expecting to share. The next step, anonymously submitting the real lab report to the clinic board. She wasn't alone. Adam was there, on her couch, drinking from her coffee mug, laughing. Jose froze. Adam stood up casually, adjusting the sleeves of his expensive blazer like nothing was wrong. "Well," he said, "so much for surprises." Nevi didn't look up. She just sat there, arms folded, mouth tight, eyes refusing to meet his. Jose's gut twisted. "What is this?" he asked slowly. "Not what you think," Adam said smoothly. "But I'm sure you'll come to your own conclusions. You always do." Jose looked at Nevi. "You told me he was dangerous, that he and Haley were using me. Was that all fake?" She finally looked at him. "No," she said, voice low. "But I didn't tell you everything." Jose took a step closer. Then tell me now. Neve's shoulders tensed. I was part of it. Not from the start, but once I found out what they were planning, I didn't stop it. I just kept watching. Her voice cracked slightly. I wanted to see what you would do, if you'd finally stop being so perfect. Jose blinked. You wanted to see me fall? She stood up. No, I wanted to see if you'd finally fight back. Adam laughed under his breath. Looks like he did. Maybe too well. Jose's breath went cold. You helped me. You gave me the recording. I did, she said, because I wanted to tip the scale. But I never thought you'd go this far. You're not the same man I knew. Jose felt the pressure building behind his ribs. So what are you saying? That I deserved it? That this was some kind of test? I'm saying you're not as innocent as you pretend to be, she whispered. And I'm not as loyal as you hoped. Adam stepped forward. She's not the villain. She's just tired of being in your shadow. Jose stared at them both. Two people who'd stood on opposite sides now somehow folded into one betrayal. The line between enemy and ally had disappeared. He couldn't trust Neva. He never could. Maybe she had grown to care. Maybe she didn't. But she had been complicit. That was enough. You knew what they were doing to me, he said flatly. And you stayed silent. She nodded. Yes. He didn't speak after that. He just turned and left. But in his chest, something shifted. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not about catching Haley or exposing Adam. It wasn't about justice. That word felt hollow now. This was about survival, and everyone was a suspect. Jose stood outside the clinic in the rain, coat soaked, fingers wrapped tightly around the envelope that held everything. Not just the lab results, not just the insurance, documents, but emails, photos, text messages, every lie, every step, every quiet betrayal, all of it printed in black and white, ink soaked into paper like blood into skin. He stared up at the building where Haley was meeting with the clinic director, the same man she had probably charmed with her soft words and polished smile. He knew what he was about to do couldn't be undone. But he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Inside, he walked with purpose. No limp, no hesitation, no fog. His body hurt, yes, but the adrenaline made it irrelevant. The receptionist greeted him, oblivious to the storm he carried. She's in conference room C, she chirped. Said you might be stopping by. Of course she did. When he entered, she looked up and smiled like they were still married, like they were still just partners navigating a bad diagnosis together. She wore a pale blue blouse, hair tied back neatly, not a single strand out of place. Even now she played the role. Perfect wife, perfect caregiver. Jose, she said, sweetly, did you get the message I left? I wanted us to talk privately. Before the board gets involved, things are escalating too fast. He didn't sit, just placed the thick envelope in the center of the table. She blinked. What's that? Everything. Haley didn't move, didn't speak. He continued, every refill you tampered with, every off-record prescription, every signature forged under my name, and more. He leaned forward slightly, voice calm but sharp. You poisoned me, Haley. And if you think anyone's going to believe you didn't know what BNC7 does, the toxicology reports disagree. So do the emails between you and Adam. Still, she didn't blink, but her fingers curled slightly on the table. Her voice lowered. You went through my things. I had to. You left me no choice. She finally exhaled like the act was too heavy to hold anymore. Jose, you don't understand. Then explain it. Her smile dropped. Do you remember what the doctor said during your last scan? When he told us that in 5 years you might not be able to speak? Or move? I remember. I lived with that prognosis every day. I lived knowing I'd be wiping your mouth while you stared at the ceiling, that I'd be signing off on your feeding tubes, that your body would survive, but you wouldn't. You decided to speed that up? No, she said sharply. I decided to manage it. You were already slipping. I just helped you rest. Jose's throat burned. You didn't help me. You broke me down. Silently. So you could control the timeline. And what would you have done? She asked, standing. Now. Waited until you couldn't walk? Until you screamed every time you tried to sleep? Until I had to carry your weight while you forgot my name? Jose stared at her like she was a stranger. I would have trusted the person beside me not to. Make that decision for me. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she said it. It was Adam's idea. I know. He told me if we controlled the decline, we could qualify for early disbursement, that we could stabilize the pain, but quietly, softly. You'd never have to go through the horror. And when I died, Jose asked, what then? You and Adam get the payout and ride off into the sunset? She flinched. It wasn't like that. But it is now. Jose stepped back. There's more. The board's going to see everything. So will the police. You can play calm here, but your voice on the recordings? That won't be so soft. Haley's lips parted, then shut. She sank into her chair, hands folding in front of her, expression unreadable. You know, she said after a long silence, I used to love you so much it scared me. I know, he whispered. That's why it hurts. The door opened behind him. Neve stood there, her face pale, holding a USB in one hand. Jose turned to her. I brought it, she said quietly. The backup files, the ones from Adam's laptop. Haley's eyes widened for the first time. I was part of it. But I didn't know how far it would go, Neve said, voice shaking. I didn't know it would turn into this. Jose took the drive and placed it on top of the envelope. Now it's done. But Haley wasn't done. You. Think this fixes anything? She hissed. You think exposing us brings you peace? You still wake up screaming. You still can't run. You still can't be who you were. All you have now is your pain and your pride. Jose stared at her. No. I have my truth. And you don't get to rewrite that. He turned and walked out of the room. The sun was starting to break through the clouds outside. Light hit the pavement in pale gold streaks. Neve followed him in silence. They didn't speak until they reached the car. I thought I could handle this, she said softly, playing both sides. But I was wrong. He looked at her. Why did you help me in the end? She swallowed hard. Because somewhere in all of this, I remembered you were the only one who ever treated me like I mattered. And I saw what I let happen to you. He nodded once but didn't say anything. They drove in silence. That night, Jose sat at his desk and listened to the last voicemail Haley had ever left him before things fell apart. It was short, sweet, deceiving. I made your favorite tea. Come home safe. He deleted it. He wasn't going back. This time, the poison didn't reach his bloodstream. This time, he got to choose what stayed and what didn't. Jose didn't go home that night. Not to the old house filled with curated memories. Not to the room that still smelled like the cologne Haley bought him last Christmas. He checked into a small hotel outside the city. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and nameless. He needed the silence. Not the kind that echoed in guilt or confusion, but the kind that wrapped around him like armor. The kind that reminded him he'd made it through. The next morning, everything moved fast. The police raided Adam's office first. Fraud, tampering with pharmaceuticals, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. His assistant, unaware she was forwarding emails directly tied to Jose's toxicology reports, broke within the hour. By noon, Adam was in cuffs, his perfect buttoned-up life unraveling on national news. Haley's arrest followed hours later. She didn't resist. She didn't cry. But the media had a field day. Devoted wife or silent killer? Beneath the wedding vow lies a syringe. Every headline stabbed into the perfect image she had painted of herself for years. Friends turned. Family stopped answering her calls. Her mother, who once called Jose a miracle, posted on social media that she didn't know the daughter she raised. Nevi released a statement to the press, brief, apologetic, and calculated. She admitted she'd been manipulated, claimed she tried to stop them when she realized how far it had gone. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. Jose didn't care anymore. He'd already won. The clinic's board issued a formal apology and suspended several staff members for their failure to identify the tampered prescriptions. Jose received a settlement. He didn't touch it. Blood money wasn't wealth. It just sat there, untouched in a new account under a name no one but he knew, but none of that was the ultimate revenge. That came later. 3 weeks after Haley's arrest, Jose visited the detention center. Not to see her, not to argue. He had no words left for her, but he left something at the front desk, a binder, thick, black, no label. Inside, a letter from the toxicology lab. Medical documentation proving full recovery was possible with treatment he had now resumed. His full diagnosis. History, including a new letter from his specialist stating that Jose's mental faculties were intact and always had been. Pages of psychological evaluations, time-stamped photos of him standing unaided, painting again, regaining strength, smiling, rebuilding, and one last document, a notarized form removing Haley from every will, trust, and insurance plan she had tried to collect from. Jose walked out without looking back. In that same week, he posted a private video online. Password protected. Only a few key people received the link. In it, Jose sat in front of a blank canvas. The camera focused on his hands, steady, precise. He spoke plainly. "My name is Jose Reyes. This isn't a confession. This is a survival log. I was meant to die. Quietly, slowly, under the care of someone I loved. But I didn't. Because one day I stopped trusting what was handed to me and started asking, why?" He went on to describe the pills, the lies, the recordings, every step, every mask, every trap. By the end of the video, the canvas behind him was covered in a single red word: remember. The video went viral inside 2 days. People rallied behind him. Survivors, widowers, betrayed partners, chronic illness communities. The story wasn't just revenge, it became resilience. Jose became a symbol, not of strength alone, but of clarity. Of fighting quietly until the moment you're loud enough to end it all. Adam lost everything. His career, his assets, even his pending deals fell through. The tech company he once planned to launch folded within the month. He was sentenced to 8 years without parole. Haley's trial drew out longer. Her lawyers tried to paint her as emotionally manipulated. Jose sat through every hearing, silent, watching, never flinching, until the final day. The judge asked if he had a statement. Jose stood slowly. I was broken. I trusted her with my medication, my food, my body. She made me believe that everything painful was part of the healing, but it wasn't. She was the illness, and I survived her. There were no cheers, no gasps, just silence. Heavy, absolute, and final. Haley was sentenced to 15 years. When the verdict was read, she didn't cry, but her fingers twitched slightly, and Jose caught it. That was enough. That was what he came for. Closure didn't come like fireworks. It came quietly, like a door locking from the outside. Later that night, Jose drove back to the studio where he now spent most of his days. The place smelled like acrylic and dust. The walls were lined with unfinished work, each painting like a scar turned into color. He picked up a fresh canvas, and for the first time in years, he painted something without pain behind it. It was a horizon, soft sky, bleeding into ocean, a figure standing at the edge, facing forward, not running, not hiding, just still. A knock at the door broke the moment. It was Neva. She held 2 cups of coffee awkwardly. "You didn't answer my text," she said. "I saw it," he replied. She stepped inside. "So, you okay?" Jose looked at her. "I'm not angry anymore. That's something. They sat in silence for a while. Then she asked the question she hadn't dared to speak before. Do you think you'll ever trust someone again? Jose stared at the horizon on his canvas. I don't know, he said, but I'll never stop trusting myself again. She nodded, and for now, that was enough. He wasn't just the survivor of a betrayal, he was the architect of justice. And when people searched her name, they wouldn't find a grieving widow. They'd find his story, the truth she tried to bury. She thought she'd silence him. Instead, she gave him the loudest voice of all, and this time, the whole world was listening.